go with the amended one because it doesn't have all the information,
Oh, yeah.
on the regular one.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll begin the meeting with a moment of silence. And I'd like us to keep in your thoughts and prayers the family of Dan Holbrook, who passed away last year. There was a mass for him on the 14th of this month. And I just wanted to mention that this evening. He's a former selectman. The meeting's being recorded and televised by the local cable company. I'd like a motion for the approval of bill and payroll warrants.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept correspondence in the read file.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Approval of meeting minutes, open session July 6, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And the open session on July 20th, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Abstain. I wasn't here.
One abstention.
Yeah, I'll abstain too. I wasn't here either.
You weren't here either. That's right. That was the threesome.
Light.
Yeah.
Okay. First item on the agenda tonight is a special one. It's a promotional ceremony in the Whitman Fire, Rescue, and Emergency Services Department for Brian Smith. Chief,
Thank you.
you're on.
Good evening, Selectmen, Town Administrator Heineman, Whitman Fire Rescue members, family, and friends. I have the honor of introducing Brian Smith tonight, as he is here for his official swearing-in ceremony. Brian began his career as one of Whitman Fire's first high school interns. Actually, both of them are in the room right now, and the intern program has produced a lot of members for our department over the years. He graduated from high school in 2001. He went and got his EMT, and then he got his paramedic, and he went to Kingston Fire in 2004. In May of 2008, Brian came to Whitman Fire Rescue as a full-time firefighter paramedic. He's been an outstanding member ever since. Brian has attained an associate's degree from Columbia Southern University and also recently completed Fire Officer 1. Brian is married to his high school sweetheart, Jessica, and they have 2 children, Annabelle and Colin, and they're Whitman residents. Brian's dad is a retired Hanson firefighter, and Brian's brother is a firefighter paramedic in Holbrook. So it's either in their blood or something in the water in Hanson. But they've all gone into public safety. I would like to make this official. Congratulations, Brian, on your promotion. To the Board of Selectmen, Town Administrator Heineman, members of Whitman Fire Rescue, Brian's family and friends, I introduce to you Lieutenant Brian Smith.
You ready? All right, nice and loud and clear, big and strong. I, Brian R. Smith,
I, Brian R. Smith,
do solemnly swear and affirm
do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will faithfully and impartially
that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge and perform the duties incumbent upon me
discharge and perform the duties incumbent upon me
as a fire lieutenant in the town of Whitman,
as a fire lieutenant in the town of Whitman,
in good faith
in good faith,
and to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
I, Brian R. Smith,
I, Brian R. Smith,
promise to impart my professional standards
promise to impart my professional standards
of quality and integrity
of quality and integrity
so that the conduct of my affairs
so that the conduct of my affairs
of my office shall be above reproach
shall be above reproach
and merit public confidence
and merit public confidence
in the position of lieutenant.
in the position of lieutenant.
I, Brian R. Smith,
I, Brian R. Smith,
promise to uphold the Constitution of the United States,
promise to uphold the Constitution of the United States,
the laws of the Commonwealth,
the laws of the Commonwealth,
and the bylaws of the town of Whitman,
and the bylaws of the town of Whitman.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, sir.
Very much.
You have a pen? Okay. And at this time, his wife, Jessica, and Annabelle and Colin, and his father, Gary, will be coming up to pin him.
Oh,
That's great. That is great.
Yeah, have your dad do it.
Like him up?
Yeah.
Yeah, hook it on.
Congratulations again. Congratulations. 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 Stay safe.
Best of luck. Congratulations. Party time.
Well, we'll wait a few seconds for the fire services people to leave.
You know, I asked my son Michael if he knew him, and he said he didn't know him.
Party at Travis's house.
Go ahead.
The library trustee.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, a few minutes to kill. Could you indulge me for 1 minute?
Indulge you?
1 minute. 1 minute. As you folks know, we've had a lot of uncertainty across the water. And I am the liaison to the Veterans Agent. And I do a lot of driving, so I listen to a lot of news. And it's really bugged me the last week or so hearing that military deaths by suicide are up 25% in 2020. And that's about 6,000 veterans a year that kill themselves. And I just wanted the Whitman residents who have served in Afghanistan and the war on terror that your sacrifice was worth it. Your family's sacrifice was worth it. Whitman thanks you, Massachusetts thanks you, and the United States of America thanks you. And I have a suicide hotline number that I like to give out. It's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838255. Or you can reach out to the Veterans Agent here in town. Because everyone somewhere has been affected by suicide. And now more than ever, these veterans are feeling the pain of what seems to be a failure, but their effort wasn't a failure. We need to acknowledge that they are patriots and heroes. And if anybody knows anybody, reach out to a veteran and check on them. Make sure they're okay. Give them these numbers because their sacrifice was worth it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. We've reached 7:10. It's time for a public hearing with respect to the application of Cowbell's Cafe, David Doyle, for a common vittler's wine and malt liquor license on the premises located at 25 South Avenue, subject to receipt of the license and mailing fees and approval of the ABCC. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Is Mr. Doyle here?
I'm missing.
Okay.
Sister's here.
Would you like to say anything to us?
Sorry, your speech hit a little
Sorry.
home.
understand.
Thank you for that. So my name is Tricia Doyle. I'm the co-owner of Cowbell's Cafe. We've been in business now for a little over 7 years. We've gotten a good rapport with the people of Whitman and the surrounding towns. And what we'd like to do now is apply for a beer and wine license. A lot of our customers have shown interest in like a mimosa with breakfast. We tried to open up at night during COVID for pizzas. We're having a little bit of a labor issue right now, so we're thinking as soon as that comes around, we'd like to offer a beer or two while someone's having a pizza in-house, and just limit it to beer and wine. And of course, we will have all the wait staff that work there be knowledgeable on what has to be done when serving alcohol.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
No problem.
Just one.
Yes.
Have you heard anything from any neighbors of any kind about any opposing?
I have not. I'll leave it to make sure Lori has not either.
Okay, good. Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Hearing no further discussion or questions, all those in favor?
Aye. Not a problem.
Good luck.
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening, and thank you for that wonderful words you said.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's tough times for sure.
it certainly is.
Okay, we have a few minutes before, is the library trustees, they're outside? No, yeah, we have a couple of minutes. We can do a couple of things before that. Okay, a couple of simple items. Under new business, take action to rescind the appointment of Timothy Greno from the following positions: Forest Fire Warden, Municipal Coordinator, Right to Know, and Director of WEMA. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second? Okay. Discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Take action to appoint Timothy Clancy to the following positions: Forest Fire Warden through June 30th, 2022, Municipal Coordinator, Right to Know, indefinite, and Director of WEMA through June 30th, 2022. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there any discussion or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
We can set the September meeting schedule. We have a meeting scheduled already for the 7th to hear the strategic planners report. And I'd like to suggest that the second meeting be on the 28th of September, if that's okay. Okay, so that'll be that. So that takes care of that.
Thank you.
Thank you. And maybe it'll take them 45 seconds to walk in, Mike. We can have the library trustees come in now. Yeah, that'd be good.
Thanks, Mike. They're probably just reading.
Not that I'm OCD or anything. Did he say they were probably reading?
Yeah.
On either side?
Oh, wait, this
5-6.
Thanks.
One more.
Okay, welcome. And
Gotcha.
okay, welcome. We're here to appoint someone to the Board of Trustees because of the vacancy that was caused by a great deal of sadness over the last month. Lincoln, would you like to introduce the topic and we'll deal with it?
Sure. So I think as this board knows and the trustees know, the state law allows when there is a vacancy for the Board of Selectmen and the remaining members of the elected committee, commission, board in question to choose a member of the public, to choose a resident to serve out the remainder of the term until the next election, which would be in May, of course, of 2022. So I know the Board of Trustees have a candidate that they would like the board, in concert with the trustees to appoint for that period. I'll leave it up to the trustees and the chairman here if you want to speak any further about it.
Our candidate, hello, good evening, I'm sorry. Our candidate is Patty Eunice. She's here with us tonight, and that's what we'd like to vote on.
Okay, would someone like to place Patricia Eunice's name in
Michael, will you?
nomination?
I move that we appoint Patricia Eunice through the annual town election to fill the vacancy that's on the Board of Trustees.
Okay, is there a second? There's a second? Okay, fine.
Second.
Does anyone have any questions or?
I guess
Yes.
just for Lori, nobody else expressed interest?
No.
All right.
No. That's it.
Okay, seeing nothing, seeing no discussion, we'll take a voice vote on this.
I'm afraid to say that the state law requires a roll call vote.
Roll call, that's a voice vote, that's sort of the same thing.
Well, a roll call vote being asking each member. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I stand corrected.
Sorry.
I don't stand corrected very often, but okay, yes.
Susan Durand, yes. Kathy
Getchell, yes.
Michael Ganchert?
Yes.
Margaret McEwen?
Yes.
Lauren Kelly?
Yes.
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 I'll vote. Kyle Kowalski, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, double yes.
Okay. Congratulations. Is there anything you would like to say to this august group?
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, of course. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jim.
Thank you.
They didn't want to be here to discuss the clock. Didn't want to be here to discuss the clock.
Okay, first on the agenda for new business is Don Byers, who would like to speak to us about the Whitman Cultural Council and what's going on with it. And Don, I'm happy to see that you're wearing a mask. I feel terrible that I don't have one on. However, I sort of went with the flow today, even though there's a sign on the door that says it's the recommendation of the CDC to wear a mask inside and to keep socially distanced inside. I'd like you to think about, and like the rest of the board to think about, how we set up our meetings going forward. I'm not wearing a mask now because I wanted to make sure I could be heard, and I think that's probably the reason why the people here aren't wearing them also. However, I'd like us to be distanced more than we are today, and maybe we can set up the room that way, so at least we'll show that we're thinking about the right thing to do. And we can get into that more later in the COVID-19 report, but just needed to say that. And Dawn, you reminded me because, like a good person, you're wearing a mask, like one who cares about other people. And there you go.
Thank you, Chair Kowalski. I'm thankful that I'm not voting on a mask or no mask tonight, but thank you to the board for having me and the Cultural Council on the agenda tonight. I appreciate and thank all of you for appointing 5 new members over the past 2 months, and the Cultural Council now has a full council of 7 members and have been working hard the last 2 months. And we're excited to, as the library trustees were just here, visit your library. We're approving grants for programs throughout the town, whether it be at the library or Council on Aging, and other programs that will support multi-generations throughout our community. So we have 2 members here tonight, Erin Johnson and Will Herron are here, and Will has offered to speak in regards to just what's happening with the council, so thank you very much.
Hello. I'm William Herron. Thank you again for the opportunity to present at tonight's board meeting. The Whitman Cultural Council was created in 1983 and has funded more than 450 community events and programs with more than $210,000 in grant funds. The council gathers input from the community and develops funding priorities based on this feedback. This year, the Whitman Cultural Council received more than 157 responses to our community input survey. We would like to cordially invite the board members and the audience to the following upcoming events sponsored by and or funded by grants from the WCC. The Uncommon Soul Concert at Whitman Park on September 9th, 5:30 to 7 p.m., and an open house in the library community room September 16th, 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. The MA Cultural Council grant application period for FY22 funds will be open from September 1st to October 15th. We encourage all to come to our open house and learn more about what the grant application process entails. Just really quick, we had inquiries about food trucks appearing at our events, and we weren't sure if we would need the permission of the Board of Selectmen in order to make that happen. But otherwise, thank you for your continued support of the Whitman Cultural Council.
Okay, thank you. Lincoln, would you like to handle the question?
I would. So the answer is no. You would not need the approval of the Board of Selectmen, but you should absolutely check in with the Board of Health as they will have some requirements.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Don.
Can I make a suggestion? John, can I make a suggestion? All your events, get a hold of the Express, Whitman Express, and put them in the paper. That way people in town will know,
Yes, I did reach out to Tracy last night, so
Yeah.
she'll be putting the concert date in there. And keeping people updated, but thank you.
Yeah.
And Erin is in touch with WHCA and putting it on the community channel as well as a slide.
Good.
So we're all pitching in.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next on the agenda, Michelle LaMattina, talk about the second annual DFS Decorating for Scholars event. Good evening, Michelle.
Good evening. I'm not as much like to stand in front of people and talk as much as my husband, so we'll be quick. So I am here tonight on behalf of Whitman Hanson Dollars for Scholars. Last year we held our first annual Decorating for Scholars event, which was a huge success. Given COVID and the weather and everything else, we managed to raise quite a bit of money. It was one of our largest fundraisers in the last few years for Dollars for Scholars. So on that same basis, we want to make it a little bit bigger this year, improve it, offer more trees for people to sponsor. We're also looking for people to sponsor the event. We did have some key sponsors last year that sponsored so that we could purchase lights and trees and signs and things like that. So we are going to reach out to see if anybody in the community would like to sponsor on that behalf, not just sponsor a tree. We would like to make it a little bit larger and have some food trucks. So we will be in contact with the Board of Health to make sure we're good on that. I'll be in contact with the fire and the police department to let them know what support we need from them. So we would like to have it this year. We did it last year 2 weekends, and it was a lot of work volunteer-wise and everything else. I know everybody enjoyed the trees, but this year we're going to condense it down to 1 weekend, which we're looking at Friday, December 10th from 4 to 8, Saturday, December 11th from 2 to 8, and Sunday, December 12th from 4 to 8. We most likely would set up during the week. We'd be in touch with Bruce Martin with the DPW to, make sure he's helping us out with different things too. And we also are going to try to improve it by on Saturday, starting it earlier, we're going to reach out to have some craft vendors there with homemade goods, like Christmas goods, things like that, that they could have a table there and sell some things for people to browse and just make it Christmassy. I did put a call into the North Pole to see if we could have a special guest on Saturday evening, and we're going to have some some local performers, so we'll be reaching out, or anybody can reach out to me. I'm on Facebook. You can email me, DFS Facebook page. We'll start pushing out a little bit of info over the next couple weeks just to kind of get people knowing that we're doing it. And last year we did have to turn away a lot of people for trees, so we're going to try to beef that up a little bit this year.
Were you successful in your call to the North Pole?
I was.
You were?
Yes, I was. So I believe on Saturday. I know. You know, when I was sitting back there, I'm like, did he come on the wrong night? I don't know. So we're hoping Santa can come on Saturday evening. So Saturday is going to be kind of our big night, hopefully. Friday and Sunday, hopefully have some food trucks at that too, just to kind of beef it up. And I know last year, you know, people ask a lot, like, why aren't they lit up during the week? Why aren't you here all 3 weekends? And basically it boils down to, you know, volunteers, people giving up their time. We have to man it because of the electricity and the generator and things like that. So we may leave the trees up, but they just may not be lit up. And that's just the way it goes. So we're hoping that all this is okay with all of you and we can move forward with getting this rolling.
Fine.
And do you have any questions?
Anyone have any questions? No. I can't wait for that one. Figures. This is your opportunity.
It is. I'm going to take it. I know it had to be a major undertaking, and definitely, you know, the people that, the unsung heroes that take the orders, I mean instruction, from you, thank you. I know, I'll tell you, obviously I'm going to abstain on the vote, but a lot of people in town made this come together. I mean, Mike Gancher, Michelle, the whole Dollars for Scholars board. It was great, and to pull it off in a year that I think people really needed something, I think it was a boost to the town. So the whole Dollars for Scholars community, once again, thank you. It really is a great organization. And my condolences for having to deal with that one.
Wow. Okay. I think it'd be nice for the board to vote to congratulate Michelle on the work that she's been doing and is going to be doing, and to acknowledge that we're fully in favor of this project.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Is there anybody else? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. You've been blessed by the board.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. We hope to see you all there and spread the word and
Hope for good weather.
hope for not a rain, blizzard, snowstorm.
Yeah, like Memorial Day, 4th of July, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's all good.
Okay,
Thank you.
The blizzard we had last weekend?
Okay, we're down to old business. Town administrators' goals and objectives. Originally, just to introduce this, we had asked, if you recall, at a last meeting, we had asked Lincoln, as part of our initiating a process of his annual evaluation, to submit to us a couple of weeks ago with the goals and objectives for the next year, which he did, and asked for comments. And he also, I believe, sat down with each of the selectmen to talk about them. And also, we have been working with council to refine our evaluation form. And we had a couple of different evaluation forms we looked at. Randy and I and Michelle formed a crew of 3 at a Zoom meeting last week to go over the 2 forms and to try to come up with something that the board would approve of, and that Lincoln would approve of. Now, because it's an evaluation form and it's about his our impression of the work that he's done, we were going to discuss the form itself in executive session, because it's sort of like bargaining. We're talking to one of our employees about how we would like to evaluate him, and he needs to be involved in that process too, so he'd be comfortable with it. We shared that the new instrument with the board and with Lincoln, and he has informed me that he's totally comfortable with the the form itself. So we do not need to discuss that in executive session. He said it was okay. The form was all right. What we do need to discuss are the goals and objectives. There's quite a list of them, and you have them in your packet. And Lincoln had suggested that the board and he agree on 3 of them. When Randy and I and Michelle were talking about it, we put all of the, just in case whatever happened, we put all of those goals and objectives in the evaluation form in the proper place. Michelle did that work. Michelle McNulty did that work. She did a very nice job. Not all of those goals can probably be accomplished in a year. Some of them are obviously going to take more than a year. So our job now in open session is to talk about his goals and objectives, and I'd like to find out first off from Lincoln if there are any of the goals and objectives that he believes are able to be handled in the first year, the ones that are most important to him, so that we can have a discussion about that and maybe agree on some of them out of the whole list that we could place in the form. Or there might be a couple of different ways of putting them in the form. You could have ones that have a star on them that say to be accomplished by, if possible, by June 30th, 2022, and the rest of them just be ongoing goals, or whatever we want to do. This is our opportunity to discuss it with Lincoln.
So, I mean,
the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think again, there's that list of suggested 14 goals and objectives that I'd suggested. As Chairman Kowalski had mentioned, he had asked me to maybe identify 3 to 4 of the ones that I'd like to focus on in the coming year. The ones that I would suggest, from my perspective, would be the item under number 3, improve communication with and participation of appropriate representatives of the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District relative to the development of strategic planning and budget process, including possibly a full-day retreat with town and school personnel, and communicating earlier in the budget process about the school's financial needs and wants. This obviously would be a goal and objective that could only be achieved in concert with the schools and the school administration, but I think it's one that we've begun to work on and focus on, and obviously it's also related to the work on the strategic plan for the town when we talk in particular about the possibility of a retreat and that goal setting for the town and how the school district interacts with the town. So that's one that I would suggest. Another that's certainly forefront, I think on most, if not all, of the board members' minds, and mine as well, is identify and pursue a clear path forward for the final disposition of the Park Avenue School, to determine what legally we as a town can do. And then with that option or options out there, likely it would come to be a town meeting vote after that, but at least in the next year to get a clear picture as to what legally we are able to do. Certainly the DPW building. Again, that's obviously a partnership with the board and obviously with the Board of Public Works Commissioners and the 2 superintendents, but clearly there's a need there. And certainly I think that's, in my mind, what should be one of the goals and objectives is to bring to town meeting a finalized plan of what that building's going to look like, what a new building's going to look like. And then finally, this is sort of one that we've spoken about a little bit. Regionalization, I think, is something that we have opportunities to pursue in. We've done some regionalization in the past, in particular, for example, with dispatching at fire, for example, is a sort of prime example. Obviously, the schools are an example, but we haven't done any of that recently. And one area where I think we could possibly have the opportunity of proving success and possibly building on that success, if we're able to successfully do it, is the possibility of regionalizing animal control services and working with some of our partner towns to consider the regionalization of that service. So those are the ones that are on my mind, but obviously it'd be great to hear from the board members.
Okay, well, right off the bat, I think getting an assistant town administrator in here somewhere before the year is over,
absolutely,
or as soon as possible, it would be one that I think you should want to handle for this year, and something that could be handled.
Certainly.
Does anyone else have some thoughts?
No.
Some of these, just for a minute, providing the select board, I should say Board of Selectmen actually, with monthly updates on the activities of each department in town. I'd like to see that as a continuing task that you would perform in writing for one of the meetings, maybe once a month, if you could do that for the board. It might not be something that's an activity that stays in perpetuity, but at least to start to get some of that communication formalized. If that would be my thought. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
I believe when we were kind of developing some type of strategy going over, and I had looked at the goals and objectives, I personally feel some of this, and I did state it then, was basically, there are a few things that I feel fall under day-to-day operations.
Like the thing I just mentioned is probably one of them.
Yeah, I think that is,
right.
Just a part of updating the board, and we're just explaining how we want that in written form. I absolutely agree with Lincoln's recommendation of trying to develop a more solid better relationship with the school. Park Avenue, it's something I've talked to Lincoln about. It is something that, honestly, I feel that building's going to get to a point where it's going to have to get torn down, and that's just another cost on the town.
Knock down now.
So to identify that, I think is a very attainable goal. I think, honestly, the create and budget appropriately is a day-to-day task to me. And then there are a few things that I absolutely, there's nothing on this list that I could say we could take off. I mean, it's developing the timeline after that.
Right.
Because there's some fantastic things that benefit everyone, from staff members to every member of the community on this. So I don't know how do we timeline it? Do we?
Yeah. Maybe Lincoln, maybe you could give us some thought between now and the next meeting. A way of separating out the tasks that you want to perform for the next, you want to complete for the next year. Mm-hmm. And then the ones that would be, as Randy says, the day-to-day activities. And somehow they could appear on the form, but somehow would separate them out as like in a different category. It wouldn't be a goal and objective. It would be an activity, maybe. Mm-hmm. But and maybe think about time frame. Think about time frames, and then we could discuss it again, and maybe at the next meeting finalize the whole thing. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Does anyone else have any comments?
Yeah, I do. On some of the issues, like the Park Ave School, that's been on the table for a while. I guess there's some legal issues that we have to deal with as far as what it can be used for, if it's not used for education. I know it's something that we've looked at, and it's been put on the back table for some reason. So, I mean, that's something that you can start the process, but it's kind of out of your hand. I think it's out of your hands to get it done because now lawyers are involved. As far as the DPW building, yes, that was my number one issue that you and I talked about. And yes, that we've gone that route and come up with different ways of building it. But again, all that could be for naught if town meeting does not approve it. That's the issue.
Yep.
So it's kind of, I mean, those are two major issues that it's kind of out of your hands in a way. You can start the process and see where it takes you. That's the problem I can see with that. Regionalizing animal control, I think we've tried that in the past. I think it's a good idea because I think we probably have the only animal control building around to house animals. I know Hanson doesn't have one, Abington doesn't have one, Rockland doesn't have one, the surrounding towns. So they'll be using ours, and whether or not they each have their own van, and different issues on that point. But that's something that can get accomplished. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean that the two that we have in house now, as far as animal control, are going to have to cover all 8 towns, 3, 4, 5 towns. Each town will be able to have their own, and they'll work together to cover each other if necessary on vacations and stuff. But they'll each probably have their own vehicle, but we have the pound. We have the area to house them. So I know Rockland tore theirs down years ago. I don't think Hanson ever had one, and I don't know about any other surrounding towns if East Bridgewater had one or not. But I think that they're achievable goals, the list of them, and some of them is just getting going, but the other ones, it's going to take some real planning, like I said. Town meeting has to approve a DPW as far as a debt exclusion, and same thing with the Park Ave school if we decide what we're going to do with it.
Yep.
So what you're saying, Dan, is that they are goals that we would like to see achieved, but you're just cautioning that not all of it is within the control
of our town administrator. You're absolutely right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, he needs to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, and that is, and as far as his number one goal and objective to improve communication and with the participation of appropriate representatives at the Whitman Hanson Regional School District, that's obviously something that needs to happen, but that also is not totally within his control.
That's right. Yeah,
that's right.
You're right.
So that's it.
Yeah,
there's still goals.
And I think it's to the same point about regionalization of animal control. Obviously, that involves the participation of surrounding towns, right? I mean, so absolutely. Yeah.
Now, one of your goals and objectives that you had written down was to begin the implementation of the strategic plan. That's not. It'd be nice to have that be a goal, because we also know that it's a goal that's going to be. The plan is going to be completed before this year is over. And actually, if that plan is constructed the way it ought to be constructed, it's going to make some of your other goals easier to deal with.
To achieve, yeah.
And it'll not only will it give you goals, but it should start to provide us with activities that can lead to the successful completion of the goals.
Just one more thing, Mr. Chairman. I would say when you and I first went over this with Michelle, this is a list that Lincoln developed himself.
Right.
And I think he made it hard for us because it really is. This list of goals and objectives alone is almost a strategic plan.
Right.
Right.
And I would commend him because I do think he hit the mark in getting the things that
are important.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair. I'd just like to add, I'm not going to rehash everything you guys said has been spot on. I want to thank you for that list because that's a very comprehensive list. I think you and I had what I deemed as a great discussion for at least a couple hours, and we covered everything from soup to nuts. And I think this is a wonderful wish list to have for going forward. Long term, obviously some short term. I'll just say that the one that I really liked the most, as I explained to you, was the creation of a financial plan to do more roads and sidewalks. And if anybody's gone to East Bridgewater, Halifax, or any of the surrounding towns, I mean, it's like they're paving every road that they have. It's unbelievable. And to have our plan to accelerate that. Some of these roads are in tough shape. The DPW is doing the best they can. But I think with these roads, if we can accelerate this and make the roads better, it's going to make our vehicles, as the town, last longer, because they're not bouncing around all over the place and getting beat up too. So I like that idea as I presented it to you, and I think that would go a long way to long term to make the town visually better and work better, and I know the public would like that. So it's just my thoughts.
So maybe for the 28th, not for the next meeting, but for the 28th meeting, you can have sifted through the comments and the reactions and revise the list in a couple of different categories, into a couple of different categories maybe.
And if I could, so certainly a point well taken regarding which ones are goals and which ones are day-to-day, operations, and I'll certainly separate that out in my own mind about what it is. I think it would be helpful from my perspective to have an idea from the board collectively about the ones that are not day-to-day items, but larger, longer-term goals. We obviously know these things might take, 2 years, and we have that on there, but it would be helpful, I know for me, to know in the next year, what is the number in the board's mind about how many goals to have. That would be helpful, if possible, to have a sense of that.
Now, on another issue, on Brian's issue about the streets and sidewalks, that may be something you can discuss with the DPW commissioners on what, because I know that Bruce is getting on Complete Streets, is doing Park and Essex Street. He also got something for the center of town. He'll be working on that. But there's other streets that he goes for grants, Complete Street grants, or wherever he can get grants to do work on streets and get more money, because what we're getting for Chapter 90 money just doesn't even come close to what we need. Of course, you always try and do the highly traveled streets and sidewalks, and then the secondary streets and roads that we live on usually get overlooked because there's not that much traffic. So, that's understandable. But I think Bruce has come up with a couple of good grants this year, and hopefully he'll look for more. That's where we're going.
Okay, so what specifically, what do you need?
I think it would just be helpful to know from the board, is it, so there are the items that are day-to-day, and then there are the items which are sort of more aspirational goals and objectives. And it would be, and some of those things we know in our mind, okay, maybe that's 2 years, maybe that's 3 years down the road. I know it would be helpful for me to know from the board in the next year, are we talking about 4? Are we talking about 5? Are we talking about 3?
Well,
that would be helpful, I guess, from my perspective.
Well, one, the assistant town administrator, clearly. I would say that presenting something to the town meeting that passes about the new DPW building would be another one. Now, and then the strategic plan. In the strategic planning exercises, at some point, whether or not we're going to need some sort of an override to provide our services is going to have to come up. I see that embedded in the implementation of the town strategic plan. As far as the one, no one mentioned specifically working with all the stakeholders to realize the fiscal year 2023 operating budget. That's what you do. That's what you did this year. That's what you're doing. That's a good example of the day-to-day.
And to be clear on that, what I meant specifically there was successfully implementing this new system of getting everyone on the same page regarding timing and getting all the department heads on the same page about submittals and having a specific thing. So not creating the budget, but having this more predictable process. So just to be clear, yes, I absolutely recognize that actually creating the budget is obviously day to day.
Okay, that's. Does anyone else have any helpful advice to Lincoln?
I would say I don't want to pick a number. How about for the 28th, Lincoln, that you take this list and what you determine is day to day, and then you timeline it. If you feel there's things that can't be accomplished in the first year, and
that would seem to be fair.
And why?
Right, yeah.
Good.
And I think that would give us at least, when we look back at this next year on the annual evaluation, there's at least a couple of goals that are achievable within a year, and then a couple that we can show progress on. Yeah, I think that would help us in a year.
Okay. Is that enough feedback?
That's helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. Town administrators report.
Yes.
Number one, COVID-19 update. Before you say anything, I'd like to let people know, if they don't know already, that the annual opioid vigil that takes place in Brockton, that has been taking place at Massasoit for a number of years, but this year it's going to be at Brockton High School, is scheduled for August 31st at 6:30 p.m. Okay, and that's where we remember those who have lost their lives over the last number of years to the opioid crisis, and the numbers as startling as the numbers that Brian was talking about as far as veterans are concerned.
That going to be in the stadium, like the baseball, football field?
I'm not exactly sure where it is. I know it's at Brockton High School. That's all I know.
It'll be in the Express.
It's I've been to it a number of times. It's a moving experience. When it first started, 6 or 7 years ago, there were about 20 to 25 people whose families allowed their photographs to be put up on a screen, and we remembered them. And it took half of an album side of music to back it up. Last year, there were something like 325 people whose pictures we saw. It took a long time. And if you looked at the photo, if you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. If you looked at the photos on the screen, on the television screen, or the movie screen, whatever you want to call it, it looked like a yearbook from one of our local high schools. It looked like you could have been looking at Marshfield's yearbook. You could have been looking at the Whitman and Hanson yearbook. They were normal people who had trouble with substances, with the use of substances, and there's got to be a way out of that somehow. And one of the ways to get out of it is to remember it, and so I just wanted to remind you that, or announce that the opioid vigil is 8:31 at 6:30 p.m. at Brockton High School. Now, to you on the COVID thing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'll first just mention regarding cases. So the positivity rate has been rising in Whitman and throughout the state and throughout our region. I think most folks know why, because of the Delta variant and the now coming Lambda variant, and the number of folks who are unvaccinated and their susceptibility to those variants, in particular the Delta variant, when they are unvaccinated. Just to give a sense of numbers, so through last Thursday, in the 14 days prior to that, our positivity rate was 3.76%. Compare that with the week before that being 2.94%, 2.38%. Before that, we were at a low. The only time recently we're at a low was in the 2 weeks prior to July 1st. We were at 0%. So as a point of comparison, there were 483 tests there a month ago, almost almost a month ago in the 2 months prior to July 1st. And again, 0 were positive. In the 2 weeks prior to this past Thursday, 931 tests. So double the number of tests, but 35 positives, so 3.76% positive. So what we know, I think most folks know this here from following the news, but what we do know is that the vast majority of the folks being hospitalized and very sick are unvaccinated, and that the breakthrough cases exist, but are resulting in less sickness, less severe sickness. So locally, what's the response to that? Chief Clancy is here tonight. We met last week with the Board of Health folks and with himself and the Deputy Chief to talk about putting together a plan for booster shots. When those, obviously, that looks like that's going to be approved very soon from the federal government. If there's more sort of detailed questions about that program, I appreciate Chief Clancy being here, but our preliminary understanding is that we will have access to vaccines in order to provide boosters. We also had the conversation about whether or not we will want to continue to have or reinitiate first and second dose clinics. The feeling there amongst that group was that wouldn't really be a good use of resources at the moment because anyone who wants to be vaccinated now has access through other means. You can walk into Duval's or CVS and get that vaccine. But I did want to sort of report to the board on what that thinking was, what that conversation is, and preparing for the booster shot piece. As far as I'll just say this out loud, I think most folks know this, but schools obviously is primary interest for a lot of people. I think most people here know, and most people watching know, that last week the school committee decided not to require but to recommend masks in schools. Earlier today, the state commissioner of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education got the approval from his board to mandate masks in schools. So that seems pretty clear. While he hasn't officially done that yet, it seems pretty clear that in the coming days that mandate will be in place for schools. As far as the board knows, all along, the town's been following the recommendations and guidance from public health professionals, including the Board of Health. So our elected Board of Health has met twice in the past 2 weeks. I've attended both meetings. What came out of the meeting 2 weeks ago today was a strong recommendation that everyone in indoor spaces wear masks. A recommendation, not a recommendation for a mandate, but again, a strong recommendation that people follow that. We've obviously on town buildings, I think a lot of folks have seen in sort of that much more prominently displayed that recommendation, and many members of the public, and staff are choosing to mask up and following that recommendation in town buildings. This morning, the Board of Health met again, decided to have that leave in place that status quo of their previous decision regarding a strong recommendation, but not a recommendation for a mandate for masking in indoor spaces. I also initiated a conversation with them just to get a sense of where they might be on it regarding vaccinations and requiring or not requiring vaccinations. Obviously, it's been in the news regarding the state for executive branch employees is going to be requiring vaccinations. The several other employers, private employers, are requiring vaccinations. I want to get a sense from the board. They made a decision this morning that they would not, at this time, recommend any kind of required vaccination requirement.
Our Board of Health.
Correct, our Board of Health. So that's the status of where we're at right now. Again, obviously, we're encouraging the use of masks and reminding folks of that. And that's the status of where we are in town at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any responses or questions?
I do. I read that OSHA came out with a ruling that if an employer requires vaccine, that they then assume, the company or employer assumes the risk of if something happens to that person. So I think maybe we should, before we do anything, is we verify that aspect of it as far as insurance purposes go, I think.
You mean if something happens to the person because the person was vaccinated?
There have been instances where people have had bad reactions to the vaccine. I don't know which ones, but and become very ill. And if it's a requirement of employment, OSHA says it falls then on the employer for.
And right now, it's a requirement of employment for all state employees, isn't it?
And OSHA, this is recent, like in the last day or two, I heard this, so it's something
Can you
to
just
think about.
check out what he's saying?
Absolutely. Yep, I'll check with town council about that.
Sure.
We have a sign in the front of our building that recommends that we follow the CDC guidelines. 3 people in this room that was filled, including us. No, not including us. 3 people that were in this room, 2 children and 1 adult, were wearing a mask.
2 adults.
2 adults?
Yeah, Dawn Byers and the other member
Aaron
of the
Johnson also.
cultural.
Okay. That's right. It's not enough to recommend. And it just strikes me as so logical that there are 2 ways to combat this virus. You all know this. One of them is to mask up, and I feel silly that I don't have one on. Okay, right now, but I'm looking at this mic. That's maybe not a good enough reason. We were able to hear Dawn. One of them is to mask up, the other is to get vaccinated. Only 2 things we have to do in order to save people around us from getting sick. Because even if you're vaccinated, you can carry it and you can transmit it. It just doesn't make any sense to me. If I had a feeling that this board would vote to strongly recommend that the Board of Health think about this some more, I'd ask for that motion. I don't get the sense that I have all that support. But if someone thinks we do, that would be a motion I would like to see. Or a motion to strongly recommend that the school department revisit the school committee revisit their last vote too. Of course, they're now going to be told that they have to do it anyway until October 1st.
Right. So it's kind of
Randy and I had a long conversation about the difference between masking and vaccinations, and we kind of differ. We kind of differ on this, and that's okay. It's okay to differ, but I just wanted to let you know how I felt. It drives me nuts.
I'll share you my experience. Many of you know that I contracted the virus in January. And while this was all going on, I wore a mask everywhere. I did everything exactly to the T, and I still caught it. And it was 3 weeks of you-know-what.
Right.
And in April, I was part of the vaccination that the fire department put forth.
Right.
I did the 2-shot Moderna, and
so far so good.
Everything has been going well. I mean, I've had some side effects that I've been dealing with, and I can't say for sure if it's the virus or the shot. I don't know. Probably nobody does. But I would encourage everyone to be vaccinated. I would encourage everyone, if you feel comfortable wearing the mask, wear the mask. But I'm not a mandate guy. I think it's just not the way we operate. I think.
But it is, Brian.
I understand.
You were vaccinated when you were a kid. Did you?
Yeah.
Was it
I understand.
No.
Yeah.
People have to show that they had those vaccinations when they apply to college.
Right.
And And public college, not just private schools.
Even to get into public schools, the government schools, you have to have certain vaccinations. But I think it's a deeply personal choice. And if you're afraid of catching this virus and you don't want to wear a mask, I would suggest you probably should stay out of the public. But I think it's a deeply personal choice, and that's how I'll stay with it.
I will just say that I somewhat agree. I'm going to somewhat agree with Brian here that let me clarify this. I do agree with Brian that it is a personal decision to have a health option, either a mask or a vaccine mandated on you. That being said, is it the wisest choice to not have a vaccine? My family has been vaccinated. We vaccinated my 15-year-old daughter within a week after she could get it. We did that because we trust the science that the vaccine is working. Now people have skepticism. I think this, unfortunately, is because a vaccine, a medical treatment, got politicized, unfortunately.
Right.
And we're paying the price for that right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, are there people out there that are going to be skeptical about a vaccine? Absolutely. Do they have the right to have there been bad cases? Of course. But when I got my shot, it was never promised that I wouldn't get COVID.
Right.
But that it would severely diminish the symptoms. And that's what you're seeing. And if we're tossing out numbers, the CDC last week has reported 0 deaths of vaccinated individuals through breakthrough cases. So it's working. People are getting less sick. Numbers on the rise because of a variant. Is that variant going to continue because we haven't gotten vaccinated? But again, it is a personal choice. I don't think it's a wise choice if you choose that route.
Yeah.
But I think people need to get vaccinated. I think if we rush, and I look at these numbers and say, yeah, we do have an uptick in the cases, but where do the hospitalizations sit? We, fortunately, because of high vaccination rates in this state, are not seeing the deaths. I'm personally afraid that if you now start mandating masks on people, those people that were skeptical are going to say, see, the government is just putting you back in a mask, and that's unfortunate.
Yep.
And that's what I wrestle with. And I would just plead with people, get the vaccine. It's a sore arm, and maybe on the second shot, you're a little under the weather for 24 hours. Trust it. Measles, mumps, rubella. If your child's in public school, they have to have it.
You looked like you wanted to say something.
I did. And Lincoln touched on it in his description. We had in Massachusetts, about 3,000 breakthrough cases in the last 7 days. We're seeing about 3,000 cases a day. So you're still 6 times more likely. The cases are 6 times more likely to be an unvaccinated individual than a vaccinated individual, even though we've got twice as many vaccinated individuals as unvaccinated. So the math is there that say that these work. And masks, even though a surgical mask is designed to keep the surgeon's spit out of the wound, it's not necessarily designed to prevent things from going in. N95s are a little better, but if there's something that's more effective right now, it's the vaccines. And just, anything we can do to encourage more people to get vaccinated, whether it be town employees or the public at large, I think we should be doing that. I don't think we necessarily need to go to a mandate right now, but I work for the state. I have to get it to go back to work. So it's not unreasonable. So I just, let everyone sit on that. I think if we're going to mandate something, I think the vaccine's the way to go, but it doesn't seem like the board is ready to mandate one or the other.
And maybe if the board listens to our conversation, they might start thinking again.
Yeah.
Maybe give the Board of Health something to think about. Maybe. Okay. Before we get on to the WMS project, we want to talk about the vote that we took in executive session.
Yes.
This might release you.
Yes.
Okay. Lincoln and I have talked about it. I'm not sure we have to go to executive session for this.
So regarding the treasurer's office clerical position, there was a vote in executive session back on December 1st to raise the class of that, or the level, I should say, of that position up from 1 to 2. That vote was dependent on some conditions in checking in with town council about how it would happen appropriately. Those conditions have been met. We got that recommendation, you got that advice from town council, so we have it. So I think we're good. I think mostly we want to make sure that we announce that vote that occurred back in December, and then confirm that this employee will be paid back through this past July 1st at the higher level. So
since it wasn't on the agenda specifically, it was on an executive session agenda, what we're doing now is we're announcing the vote of the December 4th meeting. We won't vote on it tonight. We'll vote on it at the next meeting. However, because Lincoln has said what he just said, then we can implement this.
We can implement it now, yes, and will.
Thank you very much.
Okay. And so you don't have to hang around.
Okay.
Sorry, I should have done that first. I'm sorry.
No, not a problem at all.
Thanks, Mary Beth.
Thank you very much. Have a
Thank
good
you.
evening.
Okay, Whitman Middle School project. This will be fun.
So Whitman Middle School project. So Selectman Lomatina and I and several other school administration officials and other residents of Whitman have been serving on the Whitman Middle School building committee. Since at your last meeting, I updated you and let you know that the request for services for an owner's project manager had gone out. It had come back, and a subcommittee was to decide on the on which finalist to recommend to the full committee, and then the committee would choose a recommended owner's project manager to be approved by the Massachusetts School Building Authority. Since then, that procurement has been canceled, and now is under consideration for being reissued. So earlier today, the Whitman Middle School Building Committee met, the committee made its recommended changes to the current request for services document. That document continues to have, as the committee had voted earlier, continues to have a range, an expected range for the project of $50 million to $85 million. Those are the numbers that will go out, be posted on the Central Register, in the Patriot Ledger, soliciting applicants for being the owner's project manager. And then it would be placed on September 23rd. The applications would be due back on October 13th, and all towards moving towards a review panel at the Massachusetts School Building Authority in early December 6th. So the process was put off for a few months, but it is moving forward at this time, and that's where we're at the moment. I just want to make sure that the board and whomever is watching knows where that project is in the timeline at the moment.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions of Lincoln?
I would just, Lincoln did a great job explaining what was coming ahead. I will say that about a 2-hour meeting this afternoon, and I honestly thought it was very productive. I think this whole process is going to be a little bit of a wrestling match, a little bit of a tug of war, but there's clearly a necessity for the new building, or else the town is going to be in pretty tough shape trying to make the corrections it needs just to keep the building functioning properly. I think some concerns that from the town side of things were absolutely addressed fairly, and I think open ears were from the school administration. I'm very hopeful, and I leave that meeting today very positive that some things got ironed out and moving forward in a positive direction.
Great. Anybody else?
I'll let it go.
MBTA Community Smart Growth.
This is just a quick update. At your last meeting, the board had asked that I ask the planning board for their input on these two issues, these two possible zoning reissues. The planning board did discuss it at their last meeting. They actually had it again on their agenda this evening, so we'll find out if they've come to some conclusions after this meeting ends. But the planning board is discussing it, and hopefully we'll get some recommendations and thoughts from them shortly.
Thank you. And clock relocation.
I have a question.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Brian.
I looked up the map for that smart growth zoning districts, and just looking at how many cities and towns actually voted this in, and it's not a lot.
It's not. No.
It's not a lot. And for some reason, there's a blue star that says eligible districts, and I only see 2. And one of them has not passed it. So are we way ahead of the curve on this? Or, I don't know much about this. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. That I'm looking at all the surrounding towns have not passed it except Rockland, I think. And in fact, your old town has not
No.
voted it in.
Certainly
So
hasn't.
I'm just curious as to if like, are we,
So I think we are a little ahead of the curve in considering that part of it. The reason I wanted to make sure that this board was aware of it and the planning board was aware of it in the immediate term is because late last year, early this year, the state passed what's known as the MBTA Communities Act. And that requires, and so while the regulations are not finalized by the State Department of Housing and Community Development yet on that, they will be at some point. And what that will require is that's sort of the stick to the Smart Growth Act's carrot. So through the Smart Growth zoning, which, as you point out, most eligible communities have not passed one for that. It's a thick application. It's certainly something that we'd need some technical assistance on if we were to do it. It's a complex thing. We'd want a consultant working on it. That if we passed it and it was approved and it produced housing, would make the town eligible for density bonuses, payments from the state. The reason I wanted to bring it up was this MBTA Communities Act piece, because that's the stick, right? That's where we will not be eligible for other grants that we are eligible for now if we as a town don't pass something zoning-wise. So it's longer down the road in terms of the State Department of Housing and Community Development hasn't passed regulations yet, but it's coming because the state's passed it. So to the extent we're behind the curve on that, so is everyone.
Yeah.
But everyone will find out pretty soon how far behind they are when those regulations exist.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chairman, if I could just add to, Rockland is one of the towns that passed it near us. I think Easton has more of a housing centric 40R, and the most well-known 40R district near us that I know of is Cordage Park in Plymouth, North Plymouth, right near the train, and I think they did a fantastic job. If we do go this route, I did look up to see what other towns were doing to do the planning side of it, and the EEA has a planning assistance grant that this would qualify for. CPA housing funds have been used for this in other communities, so this may not be coming out of necessarily our levy funds.
Right.
Yeah, I see. Around us, Rockland, Brockton, Easton, Bridgewater are the closest ones.
Bridgewater and Brockton.
Yeah.
Clock relocation.
Yes, be great to get the boards, briefly, there is a 1810 clock, I think a lot of folks are aware of it, at a grandfather clock at the library. The library is deaccessioning it. I've been talking with Marie Layler from the Historical Commission about bringing it over to Town Hall, which I think would be a great thing. I hope the board agrees. We're talking about where it would go. It'd be great to have the board's thoughts on where it would go. I have a few thoughts, but perhaps there's some great idea that Marie and I haven't come up with. So
we'll just get to you with our great ideas when we come up with them.
I think it should go right behind here, and actually that was Todd DeCuto's idea of having it behind here so that when someone's speaking, they can see the clock on television. But it also
Where the desk is?
Where the desk is, yeah. We do have a clock expert. I believe it's Mr. Hochstrasser. I think is how his name is pronounced.
Oh yeah.
Who I think is the expert, and he has agreed to move it for a reasonable fee and safely. So.
Huh. Okay.
But
Where's the clock now?
It's at the library.
In the historical room?
Correct.
What else is in there?
There are some historical materials left. That's all that's in there now.
Okay. I'm not going to say anything.
Maybe the Historical Commission could receive those.
That is absolutely going on as we speak.
Okay.
Anything that the library is deaccessioning, the Historical Commission has first dibs, then the Historical Society, and then the Dyer Library, in that order.
Sure. Great. Idea.
Why would we even consider the Dyer Library when it's in Abington?
Well, they're one of those.
That's only if it's not wanted by the Historical Commission or the Historical Society.
Question is where do we put it in Whitman? We don't have a museum, per se.
I don't think it'll get that far.
Okay.
I think it'll.
If anybody has any ideas about where we could place it in Town Hall, as Lincoln just suggested, get it to Lincoln.
Right against that door.
Actually, that wouldn't be bad.
That wouldn't be bad.
Sure.
I'm fine with it. If you don't, I think that would be great.
If you don't want to go into that room.
If you don't mind ever going in there.
Or it could be one of those like secret opening things. You know?
Yeah. You've been watching too much, what was that? I Spy show, whatever.
Saving the clock is number one. That's the thing.
Okay, that's the end of open session. We need to go into executive session in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A, Exception 2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-person union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. And 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares. Is there a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second. Yes.
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 And we're in executive session, and we'll come into open session just to adjourn.